How I Learned to Talk in English. A story of challenges, breakthroughs, and practical tips. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another English learning story at Explore English Online. Today we are going to share another helpful story that's packed with practical tips and examples that you can use in your own learning journey. We're going to dive deep into the methods I used, the challenges I faced, and how I overcame them. And because I know that learning English can sometimes feel overwhelming, I'll be giving you concrete step-by-step advice that you can start using today to improve your English speaking skills. So, let's jump right into the story of how I learned to talk in English. Let's start at the very beginning. My English learning journey began when I was just a student in a small town, far away from any English-speaking environment. Like many of you, I started learning English in school, but the focus was mainly on grammar, reading, and writing. Speaking was rarely practiced, and when it was in the form of short dialogues or role plays that didn't feel real. I knew how to form sentences, I knew some vocabulary, but when it came to actually speaking, I was terrified. The first time I tried to speak English outside of the classroom, I remember feeling completely paralyzed. I was at a tourist spot in my city, and a couple of foreign tourists asked me for directions. I knew what they were saying. I understood every word. But when it was my turn to respond, nothing came out. I couldn't find the words. My mind went blank, and I just stood there, nodding awkwardly. That moment stuck with me, and I realized that knowing English on paper was not the same as being able to speak it. Speaking a new language, especially one like English, comes with a lot of fear. Fear of making mistakes, fear of sounding stupid, fear of being judged. And it's completely normal to feel this way. But what I learned is that this fear is often the biggest barrier to becoming fluent. It's not the grammar or the vocabulary. It's the fear that stops us from speaking. One of the first steps I took was to acknowledge this fear and decide that I wasn't going to let it control me. I set a small goal for myself. I would try to speak English at least once a day, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. This could be as simple as saying hello to a tourist, ordering food in English, or even talking to myself in the mirror. The point was to start speaking, no matter how small the steps were. I remember one day, I went to a cafe that was popular with tourists, and I ordered my coffee in English. It was just one sentence, but it was a big step for me. The barista understood me, smiled, and gave me my coffee. That small success gave me a little boost of confidence. And that's how it starts, with tiny steps that slowly build your confidence. Let me give you a concrete example of how I practiced. I used to stand in front of the mirror and pretend I was having a conversation. I would ask myself simple questions like, "How was your day?" and then answer them out loud in English. At first, it felt silly, and I would often get stuck trying to find the right words. But the more I did it, the more comfortable I became. This little exercise helped me get used to hearing my own voice in English, and it made the language feel less foreign and more like something I could actually use. Another exercise I did was to record myself speaking. I would pick a topic anything from describing my day to talking about my favorite movie, and record myself on my phone. Then I would listen back to the recording and make notes of what I could improve. This was incredibly helpful because it allowed me to identify my weaknesses without the pressure of speaking in front of someone else. I could take my time, pause, rewind, and really analyze my speech. Over time, I noticed my sentences became more fluid, and I made fewer mistakes. I can't stress enough how important these little practices were in overcoming my initial fear of speaking. They were my private, safe space where I could experiment, make mistakes, and learn without the pressure of an audience. So, if you're struggling with speaking, I encourage you to try these methods. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done. Once I got over the initial fear of speaking, the next challenge was to make speaking English a regular part of my life. It's one thing to have a successful speaking moment, but if you don't practice consistently, that progress can easily slip away. I knew I needed to build a routine, but I wasn't sure where to start. At that time, I was a full-time student with a busy schedule, so finding time to practice speaking was not easy. But here's what I learned. You don't need hours of practice every day to make progress. Even 10 minutes a day can make a huge difference if you're consistent. I started by setting aside just 10 minutes each morning to speak English. I would wake up, grab my coffee, and talk to myself about my plans for the day. I would describe what I was going to do, how I was feeling, or even just comment on the weather. It became a morning ritual, and because it was such a small time commitment, it was easy to stick with. Another thing that helped was finding opportunities to speak English naturally throughout the day. I would take a walk around town and narrate what I was seeing in English. For example, if I saw a red car, I would say, "There's a red car passing by." If I saw someone walking their dog, I would describe the scene. "That woman is walking her dog. The dog looks happy." This simple exercise turned everyday moments into practice sessions and helped me start thinking in English, which is crucial for fluency. Let's dive deeper into how you can incorporate English speaking into your daily life, even if you're super busy. One method I found incredibly effective was what I like to call contextual speaking. It's all about finding natural ways to speak English in real-life situations. For instance, when I was cooking, I would narrate the process in English. Instead of just chopping vegetables in silence, I would say, "Now I'm chopping the onions. Next, I'm going to add the garlic." I know it sounds simple, but this practice helped me get used to describing actions and improved my ability to think and speak in English simultaneously. Another example is using public transportation. Instead of just zoning out, I would mentally describe what was happening around me. "The bus is full today. There's a man reading a book. The driver is wearing a blue uniform." These small, everyday observations kept my mind engaged with English and helped build my descriptive vocabulary. Even watching TV became a learning opportunity. I would watch shows or movies in English and try to mimic the characters' dialogues. If I heard a phrase I liked, I would pause the show, repeat the line, and try to use it in my own sentences later. This not only helped me learn new expressions, but also improved my pronunciation and intonation, making my speech sound more natural. Consistency doesn't just mean practicing every day, it also means being mindful of your progress. I kept a small notebook where I would jot down new words or phrases I wanted to use. Every week, I would review these notes and try to incorporate the new language into my speaking practice. It was like a little game. How many of these new words could I use in a day? This kept me motivated and ensured that I was always expanding my active vocabulary. One thing I want to emphasize is that building a routine doesn't have to be a rigid or stressful process. It's about finding small, enjoyable ways to make English a part of your daily life. The more you integrate English into your routine, the less it feels like a chore, and the more it becomes a natural part of who you are. The real turning point in my English learning journey came when I realized that to truly improve, I needed to immerse myself in the language as much as possible. Up until that point, my English exposure was limited to classes, textbooks, and occasional practice sessions. But I knew that wasn't enough. I needed to surround myself with English in a way that forced me to think, speak, and even dream in English. One of the most effective changes I made was to create an English-speaking environment, even though I was still living in a non-English-speaking country. I started by changing the language settings on my phone, computer, and social media accounts to English. This might sound like a small change, but it made a huge difference. Suddenly, everything I was interacting with on a daily basis was in English. My notifications, my apps, my emails. This constant exposure helped reinforce my learning and made English feel less foreign. I also switched to consuming media exclusively in English. I stopped watching movies in my native language and started watching them in English with English subtitles. This helped me improve my listening skills and pick up new vocabulary in context. I subscribed to English podcasts on topics I was interested in: technology, personal development, even comedy. Listening to native speakers talk naturally was like a window into real, everyday English, far beyond what I could learn from textbooks. Let me tell you about a specific experience that really boosted my English skills. I started watching a popular TV show entirely in English. No subtitles, no translations. At first it was difficult. I missed a lot of the dialogue, and there were moments when I felt lost. But I stuck with it. I would watch each episode twice. The first time to just enjoy it, and the second time to catch the details I missed. If I heard a word or phrase that intrigued me, I would pause, look it up, and write it down. I remember watching a scene where the characters were talking about breaking the ice. It was an idiom I hadn't learned in class, but the way it was used in the show made it clear that it meant to start a conversation in a relaxed way. The next time I had the chance, I used the phrase in a conversation, and it felt amazing to be able to use something I had picked up naturally. This kind of immersion is incredibly powerful because it allows you to learn language in context, just like a native speaker would. Music was another huge part of my immersion strategy. I created playlists of my favorite English songs and would listen to them on repeat. I would read the lyrics, sing along, and try to understand the meaning behind the words. It was fun, it was engaging, and it helped me improve my pronunciation and rhythm when speaking English. Songs are a great way to learn because they stick in your mind, and the repetitive nature of music helps reinforce vocabulary and sentence structure. But immersion goes beyond just consuming media. I also sought out English-speaking communities online. I joined forums, participated in English-language social media groups, and even played video games in English. These platforms gave me a chance to interact with real people, ask questions, and practice writing and speaking in a natural, unstructured way. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about communicating, making connections, and using English as a tool to express myself. One thing I learned from this immersion process is that the more you surround yourself with English, the more it becomes a part of you. You start to think in English, you start to dream in English, and eventually, speaking English feels less like a task and more like second nature. It's not an overnight transformation, but with time, the results are undeniable. As I became more confident in my speaking skills, I knew that the next big challenge would be speaking with native English speakers. Up until this point, most of my practice had been self-directed, speaking to myself, recording my voice, or engaging in casual online chats. But I wanted to take it to the next level and have real conversations with native speakers. I started by looking for language exchange partners online. There are numerous websites and apps where you can find people who want to learn your native language in exchange for helping you with English. I found a few partners who were native English speakers, and we would schedule video calls a couple of times a week. This was a game changer because it pushed me out of my comfort zone and into real, spontaneous conversations. One of my language partners was from London, and we would talk about everything, from cultural differences to our favorite foods. At first I was nervous. I was afraid I wouldn't understand him, or that I would make too many mistakes. But the more we spoke, the more comfortable I became. I learned to embrace my mistakes as learning opportunities rather than something to be ashamed of. If I didn't know a word, I would describe it until he understood, and he would teach me the correct term. I remember one conversation in particular that really boosted my confidence. We were talking about travel, and I was trying to explain a funny incident that happened to me on a trip. I got stuck a few times, searching for the right words, but I kept going. My partner was patient and encouraging, and by the end of the story, we were both laughing. That moment was a breakthrough for me, because I realized that communication is not about being perfect. It's about connecting, sharing, and enjoying the interaction. Another great experience was participating in an English conversation group in my city. These groups are often organized by local language schools, libraries, or community centers, and they provide a relaxed environment where people can practice speaking. I joined a group that met once a week, and each session had a different topic of discussion. We talked about everything from current events, to hobbies, to personal stories. It was a safe space where everyone was learning, and no one judged you for your level of English. Speaking with native speakers taught me more than just language. It taught me about cultural nuances, humor, and the natural flow of conversation. I learned that English is not just about the words, it's about the rhythm, the intonation, and the little phrases that make a conversation feel authentic. These experiences were invaluable, and they pushed me to a level of fluency that I never thought I could achieve. So, how did all these steps come together to help me finally speak English fluently? It wasn't any single method or technique that did the trick. It was the combination of everything I've shared with you today. Overcoming the fear of speaking, building a consistent routine, immersing myself in the language, and practicing with native speakers all played crucial roles in my journey. One thing I want to emphasize is that reaching fluency is not a straight path. There will be ups and downs, moments of doubt, and times when you feel like you're not making any progress. But the key is to keep going, even when it feels hard. Learning to speak English is like building a muscle. It takes time, repetition, and effort. But with every practice session, every mistake, and every new word you learn, you're getting stronger. I kept reminding myself that fluency is not about speaking perfectly. It's about being able to communicate your thoughts and ideas clearly and confidently. It's about being able to connect with people, share your experiences, and express yourself in a new language. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes. Even now, as someone who considers themselves fluent, I still practice English every day. I have a routine that keeps my skills sharp and ensures that I'm always learning something new. I start each day with a short English podcast while I'm having breakfast. It's a great way to wake up my brain and get into the English mindset. I also make a habit of reading an article or a chapter from an English book each day, highlighting any new words or phrases that I want to remember. I continue to have regular conversations with native speakers, both online and in person, whenever possible. And I still keep my little notebook of new words. Some habits never change. These practices aren't just about maintaining my fluency. They're about continuing to grow and refine my language skills. Because learning a language is a lifelong journey, and there's always more to explore. So, there you have it, my journey of learning to talk in English. It's been a long road, filled with challenges, breakthroughs, and countless hours of practice. But it's also been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. Being able to speak English has opened up so many opportunities for me, both personally and professionally. It's allowed me to connect with people from all over the world, access new information, and express myself in ways I never could before. If you're on your own English learning journey, I hope this story has inspired you and given you some practical ideas for how to improve your speaking skills. Remember, it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to feel nervous, and it's okay to take things one step at a time. The most important thing is to keep speaking, keep practicing, and keep pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. Because every time you do, you're getting closer to fluency. Thank you so much for listening to today's story at Explore English Online channel. If you found this story helpful, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us keep creating content that helps you learn and grow. Until next time, keep practicing, stay motivated, and never stop speaking English. You've got this.